Manuela, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Peter. Great to be here.
It's so great to have you. And I'm excited that you're solving the single use plastics issue. This is a huge issue that has a big impact on climate. Tell me about Hedea.
So, Kadea eliminates the packaging and greenhouse gas footprint of the beverage industry while hydrating frontline workers, that's construction, military, refinery, fulfillment center workers, with a solution that has fewer logistics, lower costs, and superior safety outcomes for those corporates.
Oh, that's great. So that has to be a lot of people, a lot of plastics, a lot of logistics. Tell us about the market and how big is that challenge that you guys are overcoming?
So we're focused, as I said, on what we generally will define as the industrial workforce. That's not a perfect category title, but it's basically any environment where the population is doing manual labor and therefore needs to hydrate to physically perform their jobs. And as I mentioned, right, that's construction, the US Air Force is a customer, fulfillment centers, manufacturing plants, et cetera. So, in terms of spend currently in the United States for plastic bottled water with these corporates, we estimate that is about $4 billion. Once you add in flavored products, energy drinks, your Monster Energy, your Coca-Cola and apple juice, then it's more like $8 billion in the US. And so that's a really nice, neat beachhead for us. I'll also add we're headquartered in Chicago, and our focus for these first few years really is in what we call the heartland of the United States. Basically, think, Minnesota down to Mississippi is our purview. And it's been a really nice geographic focus. It's allowing us to build relationships really quickly, a lot of great word of mouth. And a big part, since you're in the sustainability space, is to flip on its head the idea that sustainability is for, the wealthy elite, and say for sustainability to scale, it needs to be accessible. And so we're really focused on more of your industrial blue collar workforce who I think has been left out a little bit of the sustainability conversation.
And no, that's great. And I'm not surprised that something so mainstream is coming out of Chicago. So many great companies, so many investors, good investors in the Midwest. So I think that's exciting. I hear that you've raised a little institutional capital so far. Maybe you tell us about that and what you guys are up to now in terms of fundraising.
Perfect. So we've raised a couple $1 million from initially a mix of angels and some micro VCs. And we've gotten some capital as well from a great few micro VCs that are Supply Change Capital, which is two women led team split between Chicago and LA. We got our first institutional check from the Exelon Foundation, which is a utility, and they focus on supporting underrepresented founders in their core markets, Chicago being one of them with ComEd. And we also received an early check from a really amazing organization here in Chicago called Evergreen Climate Innovations. And they're focused as well on supporting underrepresented founders in the Midwest working on climate. And they're what they call a 501(c). So basically an evergreen fund, the returns from investments get put back into the fund to then continue investing. Those are and I should add, you're in Florida, so PS27 also is a fund out of Jacksonville who has backed us with a focus more on digital solutions, which is increasingly what we're focusing on as well. And we're currently preparing for a seed round. So, for anyone who's listening would be interested to potentially talk to you if you're interested in what we're doing at Kadea.
Oh, that is so great. Sounds like you have some great investors in the fund already. Now, I'll hone in on the Florida one you mentioned. So you mentioned digital solutions. Tell me about that side of the business, because I don't think that's quite as intuitive as the physical side of the business.
100%. So I will take a quick step back and just briefly explain how the physical part of the business works. So we've designed a bottling plant that is the size of a vending machine. Like a vending machine, you go to our station, you pick and choose what beverages you want. We dispense those on demand in our custom and now design patented bottle. And it's a stainless steel bottle. I'm holding it up to show Peter. And every bottle has a QR code that's laser etched on the bottom. And to interact with the station, because we're a B2B to C solution, you as a worker in this environment scan an identifier. It could be your work badge, could be a QR code that we'll give you. And so we link the bottle to the user. Think of it as a library card. And that has created amazing accountability. We're getting 99% of our bottles back with no penalty or deposit. So after you've consumed your beverage, you drop the bottle back to any station in our network. And then our patented station washes, sanitizes, inspects, and refills the bottle for the next user. So that's the core of the physical product. But as you can imagine, by linking the bottle to the user, we get this really, it's a fundamental data set, but it's data that has never existed. It's basically 8 columns of data. And we create you scan your QR code. So we have a user ID, and then we identify the time and date of that vend, the location. So was it station X or A? And what did you purchase? Did you have a Dr. Pepper? Did you consume a Gatorade? And then, of course, when the user returns the bottle to another station, its date, time again, as well as the location of that station. And so from that simple data, that row of data, we can now start to draw out consumer patterns that are really exciting and have never existed for CPG companies. So Coke and Pepsi, et cetera, for the first time can understand how consumers are interacting with their product and also to follow the journey of that individual. So user XYZ drank a Diet Coke at 9 a.m. and then switched to a Diet Pepsi at 1 p.m. How did that happen? Why? Was there a messaging opportunity that was missed? And so that's one of the uses of the data. The other piece being, since we're focused on these industrial environments where hydration is critical to health and safety, and there's a lot of compliance around that from OSHA, we're also able to take that data, we aggregate it anonymously, and we provide that to then the safety or facility manager so that he or she can dynamically recommend rest and water breaks, depending on the different consumption levels of the workers, but also taking into account pre-existing conditions, the kind of work that's being done, and the heat index. So if the heat spikes, right, 5 degrees, you got to be drinking much more water than you were before. And our system and our recommendation engine through an app and a corporate dashboard allow for that dynamic relationship. So you can think of it as step trackers for hydration.
Wow. I mean, that's really a cool model. And as I hear you talk about it, it just seems to make a ton of sense. Couple questions. Top, and I see you drink. Is that one of your bottles? I must know.
Oh, this actually is just a regular stainless steel bottle. I should be drinking from my bottle. I will switch to that.
You gotta switch over. So that's super cool. But if I'd love to know a little more about your revenue model and how it works and how it scales and so on and so forth. And then also just who essentially, how did you think of this and who are your competitors that are out there in the market because it just seems like such a cool idea. There's got to be others trying to do this, but maybe not. Maybe the patents give you a nice moat.
Two critical questions, and both have taken a lot of time, of course, to come to a good spot, but we're feeling really good about our revenue model. So, as I mentioned, we're B2C, and we're basically following a traditional vending machine model. We call it hydration as a service. So, we place the kiosk, we own and operate it. So, think of us as the vending machine owner operator, and we place that kiosk. Now, if the worker goes to the station, scans his or her QR code, and chooses on the touch screen, I want a bottle of water. That bottle of water is free for the worker. and the charge for the water goes to the corporate. And we're matching whatever the corporate is spending today on single use wholesale in terms of pricing. Across America, you're going to spend at a Costco or a Walmart 23 to 30 cents per bottle of water wholesale at volume. We'll match that. So we're saying to the corporates, and part of our focus and our market sizing reflects this, are corporates that already are providing bottled water. And that's construction sites, that's military bases, it's a whole bunch of different environments. So what we're saying to the corporate is, look, you're going to spend the same amount of money you're spending today, but now you're going to get a digital record that you can show to OSHA inspectors who show up unannounced. You'll have a dynamic solution that lets you recommend hydration to ensure your workers are healthy and safe and productive. And we're eliminating the need for you or a service to go out to the Costco, load up a truck, and bring that pallet of bottles back to the work site. So we're eliminating all that logistics and time. And then if you're that worker and you scan your QR code and you choose an enhanced beverage, you want to add carbonation, flavoring, electrolytes, we charge the individual directly. We're at a range of between $2 and $4. For ease of the math, it's an average $3. And in that case, what we're saying to the worker is, we're going to provide you the same variety that you get at your gas station or convenience store when you're driving into work or during your rest break. And instead, you don't have to go there, and you can get it at your work site. And through that revenue model, we can get to a sub 1 year payback period on the CapEx of the station, which is really exciting. And then for every bottle that we vend, we reduce the carbon footprint 100 grams of CO2 equivalent, which is 77% better than the plastic single-use alternative. And that's a 10 percentage point improvement from where we were last year. And next year we'll be at 86% to 87%. So carbon footprint reduction, which is tracked. So the corporate can now report that accurately. And then we maintain the relationship with the consumable suppliers, the filter, the carbon packs, the flavorings. So that's the revenue model. I want to pause there and make sure that I've answered any questions.
And now I love the model. I mean, first of all, you hear sub 1 year payback. That makes a ton of sense. You're giving these businesses a GHG reduction, which is huge. They all care about the emissions that they're putting out. So I won't even get into the whole carbon credits thing, but they all care about it in terms of reducing emissions. So you're touching on some really nice points there. And then of course they all want data. You hit on the OSHA thing. So yeah, I love the revenue model. I think it makes a ton of sense. And anytime you hear sub 1 year payback, it sounds good. Also, I know you're trying to do a blue collar, but what popped in my head was, we had Lincoln Blevins on the podcast, who runs the energy program over at Stanford University. And I'm thinking they'd be all over this because, same deal. You could tie it to the students, they'll turn it back in. And he very closely tracks their carbon footprint of that university. And I view Stanford at this point as like a mini city of the future, because they've been able to reduce their carbon footprint so much. And so anyway, just a little connection with another podcast guest there.
I love that. I would love to talk to him just because he's so, it sounds forward thinking. We originally thought we would be going after white collar environments as well as academic institutions. And those were the environments that I was most familiar with. Then COVID hit, completely upended in-person attendance. And we thought about the environments where people are going to work every day. And so you don't have the fluctuation of in-office attendance you do in the white collar space. And we would love to go to university campuses next. What we've said is, A, we need to prove that we can carry the variety of flavors that a university campus body would expect. And you might know about pouring rights. Most universities have a contract essentially with either Coke or Pepsi. So until we can really have a buttoned up answer for Coke or for Pepsi, hey, you can use the Kadea system for your syrups, and we actually deliver you 33% lower costs, then we'll be able to go into those environments. So absolutely, we have a lot of other opportunities ahead, but want to stay really focused on solving a more immediate pain point. And I think that gets to your second question. What is the competitive set? Again, in a university campus, a white collar office, an airport, shopping mall, hotel, gym, all these other possible environments for Kadea that we are eyeing, you have so many options already. It's a very competitive and busy landscape. I do not envy a new beverage brand trying to launch and enter the market. It's just very cutthroat trying to get anybody's attention today. Whereas an industrial environment, our competition is either pallets of bottles of water, maybe an old school water fountain, which have gone into disuse since COVID and no one's changing those filters, or some sort of, new water dispenser, maybe an LK that you would see at the airports, plus a vending machine. So the solutions today are always a water option and a vending machine. And so your facility manager has to work with the HR or procurement team to balance the availability of beverages. And with Kadea, we can do both in one. And we can do it with all those digital tools for health and carbon tracking that nothing else has today. And so going back to that earlier point of our beachhead strategy, one of our angel investors who used to run Coca-Cola India's bottle reuse program, so billions of glass bottles getting washed and refilled and transported back out throughout India, he said, "Congratulations, you found the one environment where Coke and Pepsi aren't." And so we've really found this environment where the competitive landscape is much more flat and available. Our solution is a 10x improvement against the alternative. And we're solving some really urgent logistic and safety issues that the alternatives can't hold a candle to.
Yeah, that is super insightful. I've been on a number of power plants and always they have this crappy old vending machine. Most of them don't work. It's got broken plastic and different things like that. So you're absolutely right. Whereas in other environments, you see a lot more modern solutions. And it is, my goodness, so cutthroat for a new beverage brand. I'll give a shout out to a brand from down here called Celsius, which has done really well, really coming from nothing 10 years ago. And what a phenomenal company. But yeah, other than Celsius, by very few can you think of that have just really crushed it.
Celsius sells so well in these industrial environments. It's an amazing product. I am not a big energy drink consumer, but I've been drinking Celsius because they're so popular and trying to understand all the flavor options and why people really enjoy it. Yeah, that's absolutely a great brand.
Yeah, tastes great, and it's a little bit less expensive than Red Bull for a bigger portion, I think is one of the reasons it really went gangbusters.
Yep. Yeah, I think the can stands out, really nice branding and messaging. And if I'm not mistaken, it's lower sugar, I think, right?
I think it's no sugar. They use
No
some
sugar.
kind of alternative sugar alternatives. It's supposed to be a healthier option. It, I use an app to scan everything I consume and grade it based on health grades. And Celsius does beat out Red Bull when it comes to that. So it's supposed to be a little better.
Awesome.
So tell me about what your next steps are in terms of use of proceeds. Once you raise your seed round, where are you guys going next?
Perfect. The station that I described to you, we've received a utility patent on that. And we are really excited about now going out for a few more patents for the core subsystems that we did custom design. So one of the things I did during COVID when I couldn't do user testing was to really invest in the station R&D. And in the middle of COVID, everyone was asking, well, how are you going to make sure the bottles are clean and sanitary for reuse? And so worked a lot on that. And we now have this beautiful custom bottle wash sanitized subsystem that has outperformed all existing commercial and regulatory standards. So that would be one of the subsystems that we aim to go out and patent, and a few other core subsystems as well. And then with the station, we are making design improvements to bring the bill of materials down a little bit. We have a sub 1 year payback period, even at the higher bill of materials. So if we can bring that down further, we could even get to a sub 7 to 8 months payback period, which would be awesome. And then we are getting ready to deploy 20 units in 2024. 17 of those are contracted out. The final three are in final negotiations for contracting. So we'll be sold out by the end of this month for sure. And we're going to then go place those units all around the Midwest and support them and, ensure that customers are happy, learn from them, and continue to make design improvements so that we can get ready for manufacturability and scale. The goal being that we'll be able to transition to a contract manufacturer sometime in 2025. And another big part of the use of funds is that we have a corporate dashboard showing the data that I described. So, helping safety managers monitor worker hydration, helping HR and compliance ensure that they are reporting everything to OSHA and, complying with all the regulations, but also reporting to executives carbon footprint. And then for the individual, helping them set goals for hydration, carbon footprint reduction, and set reminders for their own goals. So both of those exist, but they have not been built out to the level where they could be revenue generating. I would say that they've been a little bit more placeholders. And so we're investing heavily in the digital aspect of the solution because over time, as we scale, I expect that the value of the data will continue to increase and the recurring revenue potential, of course, becomes even more, valuable over time.
Yeah, there's just no doubt about that. So you touched on the units that are going in the field. That is so exciting. I think you mentioned the Air Force, but who are some of your other customers, if you could share?
So, in addition to the US Air Force, which has been an incredible supporter and partner of ours, our very first customer and now repeat customer is Gilbane, which is a well known general contractor in the construction space. And we went from one unit on a major work site in Indianapolis to now multiple units where we're going to be the only hydration option for that work site for 1,100 tradespeople every day. So a huge vote of confidence. And now looking to a few other Gilbane work sites across the country. I'm not going to name names yet, but a few other major general contractors signed sight unseen for our units, put down the deposits. We've worked with a major pharmaceutical company here in Chicagoland and getting ready to grow that relationship. We launched 2 weeks ago at a manufacturing plant just west of O'Hare, and that's a 3-month paid pilot that we hope, of course, will convert to longer term relationship. A few auto parts and components manufacturers in Southeast and Southwest Michigan, and then food manufacturer, kind of a next gen food producer out of Indianapolis as well. So we're really between Michigan, Illinois, and Indiana for next year.
Wow, that's really strong. It To me, one of the most exciting things is you already have reorders from a major customer. So to have a customer test the product and then want to deploy it across their business, I think that's enormous. I'd imagine just the general contractor space alone has got to be an enormous market for you. And I can think about, sort of there's a herd mentality in every industry. Once you're able to have a big win, getting more customers from that same industry is always easier. So how big is, say, that market by itself? The general contractor's got to be big.
We're figuring out exactly what our way into the general contractor market. So I don't mean to not answer your question directly. What we're learning is that generally general contractors don't outright own the equipment. So they would lease it from an equipment leasing firm. And so it's possible over time that would be our target customer set. But of course, we need to prove the units in the field as we are doing. So we're still on track to fulfill that strategy, but it's possible that the individual who ultimately signs on the dotted line is someone else. And the other option, and this would be an even bigger market, would be property owners and developers, where they can dictate to some degree what requirements apply on their work site. So, are there high standards for GHG, for example, reductions? And of course, with New York City, for example, local law 97, so many of the property owners and developers who are based in New York, but then operate nationally and globally, are really thinking about climate and how to reduce the footprint. So that would be a much larger market for us. I don't have an exact number for you. So I guess to say the general contractor market outright would probably only be about 1 to 1.5 billion in terms of annual spend. But then when you expand to these other channels and where they could open new doors, I think it becomes a much bigger market.
No, that's incredible. So you've got a little bit of a beachhead in a big market, which is exciting. You've got institutional capital in the company, and you've got a clear use of proceeds to sort of go to the next level. I know this year has been crazy in terms of fundraising, but would expect next year to improve, although, none of us know what's going to happen in the future. But Manuela, it's been really great having you on. Could you tell the audience how they can get in touch with you?
Absolutely. Please reach out on LinkedIn. I'm active there. You'll see me posting about Kadea, and I'm really receptive to meeting new people. So please reach out. And I'm Manuela Zoninsein, one of the few out there, if not the only one. And if you also look up Kadea on LinkedIn, I'm the CEO and founder. So connected that way.
Very good. Well, Manuela, thank you so much for being on. It's been a pleasure, and we look forward to seeing great things in the future from Kadea.
Thank you so much, Peter. I had a great time.